Welcome to Stoked with Megan McPhail, the podcast that helps you get super effing jazzed about your work, life, and bank account. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become a seven-figure business coach, entrepreneur, and elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on inspiring others to do the same. Are you ready to say goodbye to the 9-to-5 grind and start going after some big, bold dreams? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, this is your host, Megan McPhail.
And your co-host, Todd Reedy.
And today we are going to talk about how to quit your job. So this is for all the folks working those crappy 9-to-5s. And it's the biggest question that we keep getting over and over and over again when I poll my Instagram audience and my email list about what they'd like to hear on the podcast. I keep hearing from people that they want to know, how do I do it? How do I quit my job? So we're going to go over some of our recommendations and kind of overview of our story a little bit again on how we each quit our jobs. So yeah, let's get started because I definitely want you to quit your job. So the first thing I want to talk about is knowing your numbers. And this is critical because if you quit your job and you have all these extra expenses and you don't know how much money you need to save and live off of for a while, I mean, it just makes everything so much harder. So when I was preparing to quit veterinary medicine, I pretty much made a spreadsheet. And Todd, you'd be so proud of me because it's one of the few times I really made a spreadsheet. But I made a spreadsheet of all of my expenses, and there were a lot of them. It was, very enlightening and a little scary because at the time, I was making six figures as a emergency veterinarian, and my lifestyle had crept up to that point, and I didn't really have that much money in savings, and I was paying for 2 cars, a 2-bedroom apartment in Denver. I had like every subscription service you could imagine. I went and bought coffee and random food before every shift at the hospital because I worked so hard and had so little energy. I had like a cleaning crew and just spent all kinds of money on convenience things. I just spent money on tons and tons of shit. So I made a spreadsheet and basically one by one, line by line, I went through and kind of made it a game to eliminate what I could or decrease what I could. So all the subscriptions had to go. I downgraded from a 2-bedroom apartment to a 1-bedroom apartment. I sold, I think, both of my cars. But I definitely got comfortable with getting uncomfortable. I was like, oh my God, how can I sell my car? How can I move into a 1-bedroom? All this stuff. How can I get rid of so many things? I sold a lot of stuff. At the time, I still owned my house from when I lived in Florida and was renting it out. So I sold that. And I had quite a bit of debt that I had to pay off from building my photography business. So pretty much the money that I made from selling the house went to that debt. And I just started becoming like a budget queen. And I was following Dave Ramsey at the time, which I don't really recommend because he really makes it seem like you're not allowed to have any fun at all. And I pretty much didn't for a long time. And I don't want you to necessarily suffer the way that I did and scale back to the extent that I did because I was no longer making my own coffee. I wouldn't even make it at home. I would go to the apartment, like free coffee and get my free coffee from the hospital too, which was disgusting. I was like pretty much just eating rice and beans and eggs and cheese and maybe some salsa on top. That was like all I ate for meals. I was really roughing it. But when I came out of that, I was like terrified to spend money. So I don't necessarily 100% recommend that, like that scorched earth, as Dave Ramsey likes to call it. But it was really helpful to get my expenses down as low as possible and also save up money so that when I made the transition, and it's scary as hell no matter what, no matter how much money you have in the bank, it's terrifying to quit your job. But I felt better knowing that my monthly bills were like $7,000 cheaper a month than they were, and that I had very little things that could go wrong that I would need to pay for. I think I had like 7 weddings booked out or something like that and like a few months of savings. And then after I did pull the trigger and quit, I used all of my spite and anger as motivation to kick ass in business and make it work so that I could, kind of turn around to my bosses with a big F you and never have to go back and be a veterinarian again. So that's kind of my story and what I did. So that's how I looked at my numbers and understood my numbers and was able to lower my costs as much as possible, save money, and then also make the leap. So what would you say, Todd? What was your process like when it came to the numbers?
It was slightly different because I had been also working a pretty good, stable engineering job, and I had been quite frugal beforehand. So I had put a lot of money in savings. And so I knew that going in that I had kind of a longer runway of this savings in the bank account. But just like you, the spreadsheet is king here, right? Because you'll have way more expenses than you think. Like even being frugal, expenses creep in, right? And so, yeah, spreadsheet with all the different categories, like your necessities, rent, insurance, utilities, transportation, food, healthcare, all of the different things to know exactly what I was spending on any given month. And then also like the, I guess, discretionary spending. So like if worst came to worst, I knew that, yeah, my needs were going to be met, but could I cut out eating out? Just depends. Could I cut out entertainment or some of my subscriptions? And at that time, because I knew I had more of a savings, and part of my quitting plan was to maintain my current lifestyle. So that was important to me. And so I just knew that I wanted to live the same, but that cut into how long that runway was because I was living a very comfortable life.
Yeah, I would say with you quitting, our life has been totally the same as when you were working your engineering job because like you saved like half of your paychecks, right? I mean, you were really great about saving money. Not everybody is. I was not. I was good at spending.
Yeah, so in those days, I was on kind of the what is it, FIRE movement. So financial independence, retire early kick. Oh, yeah. So, I was studying all these, mostly engineers, all these guys that, I had a few women that basically had found a way to reduce spending so they could save the vast majority of their paychecks to ultimately get to retirement faster. So, I mean, you could go down a huge rabbit hole, and we have mixed feelings about that movement now, which, man, that could be another podcast episode. But
that could be a whole, like the whole FIRE and Dave Ramsey thing where you basically give up all life's pleasures in order to save money, and every decision you make is just about saving money. Yeah, that left me in a really messed up place. So describe, since you quit more recently than I have, describe that feeling of taking that leap, even though you had like 6 months of savings. Oh, and we should also mention that you only had 3 video gigs booked, right? Each for like $500 or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So like his calendar wasn't like booked out when he quit, and neither was mine. Like I think the number 7 keeps popping into my head. Like I only had 7 things booked when I quit. So yeah, what was that feeling of making that leap, even though you had a big cushion?
Oh, it was probably the scariest thing ever. And it took a long time to like wrap my head around it, to make my plan, to like analyze the numbers, reanalyze the numbers, think of like best case scenario, worst case scenario, like played every kind of permutation that could have played out because I'm a planner and worrier. But yeah, it was super scary. And it took like months to be able to prepare myself to put that notice in.
Yeah, I remember, wasn't there like a last thing that happened that like pushed you over the edge to quit? Or did you just make the decision?
As I recall, because this was during the lovely COVID times, and I was still having to go into work because my job was considered to be essential.
And classified.
Yeah. And there was like a business trip to like Florida, which was like the heart of COVID in the US at the time. And so yeah, like my boss and my job required me to travel, and I said no, like it's not going to happen. So that was like the second to last straw. And then the final straw was I compromised and went on a trip to Texas, which was also a hotbed. And one of the guys that I was working with, I had conversations like speaking like face to face, even when we had masks, had COVID. And so it just was too scary, too close for comfort. And I think that was the last straw to say, forget this. That job definitely was not worth the craziness and the scare of COVID, or at least what we knew of it at the time.
Yeah, those were back in the scary days before vaccines and stuff. And I remember there were multiple times you had to quarantine for like 2 weeks. And it was terrifying thinking that you were going to come down with COVID. And then we couldn't hang out, of course. And yeah, I just remember that being a really scary time, and your job could have cared less. And like if you had gotten COVID and given me COVID, then I would have had to cancel elopements and like refund like $5,000-$6,000 packages. And like, yeah, they could have cared less if that happened. That could have been financially devastating for me, and they didn't care. I also remember that you gave them 2 months notice, right? And that was so that they had enough time to like find a replacement and train them up and all that kind of stuff. And by the time you left, they hadn't even posted the job yet.
That's correct.
Which is crazy.
So clearly my job wasn't that important, but it was in their eye to make me travel during COVID.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So, I mean, we can go on and on about stupid crap like that forever and how we're so replaceable. Yeah. I mean, when I finally quit, I mean, I had like a buildup of awful experiences, and the straw that broke the camel's back was when the guy yelled at me at my face and swore and all that stuff. And management just didn't care. They don't care about us. So why do we put so much of our heart and soul and effort and time and all that stuff into these jobs that don't care? So do you want to go over what the next thing is besides knowing your numbers for quitting your job?
Yeah. So before we move on though, if you don't already know, like also in that spreadsheet, put your balances of all your savings accounts, all your checking accounts, all of your loans that you have or debts, because you have to kind of get a big overall picture of what your finances look like, because your loans, your mortgage, they don't care that you quit your job. Those payments still have to go on. Mm-hmm. If you have medical expenses, student loans, all that stuff still, those bills need to continue to get paid. So basically do a complete overhaul, look at everything, know where every dollar that you own and every dollar that you owe, where it's accounted for.
Yeah, and definitely pay off any high interest credit card debt so that it's not just like driving you crazy when you quit. Again, the whole goal for me was to lower my monthly expenses as much as possible so that when I made the leap, it wasn't as scary, because I just didn't have many bills like at all at that point. I basically turned it into a game, and I just was obsessed with seeing that total number of monthly expenses dropping and dropping and dropping. And I mean, I got it down from like $9,000 to like $2,000 or something crazy like that. And like, yeah, I'm like, I only need $2,000 a month to survive. Cool. Yeah. F this job. I'm going to go out on my own. So it just gives you a lot of freedom and kind of untraps yourself. But if you've experienced that lifestyle creep, it can be hard to say goodbye to a lot of things. I even sold a lot of my furniture and stuff like that so that I could just keep putting money in my savings account. So yeah. What's the next thing, Todd?
All right. So number 2 is to plan your exit strategy. And I think that a lot of this, I mean, again, has to do with your specific situation. Are you looking to maybe just go to part-time? Are you looking to quit outright? So you have now all of your time to put into your new side gig, an existing side gig, and or your new business. The part-time is a good option, which I considered it. I don't know why I ended up not pursuing it, but part-time is a good thing because it kind of allows you to play in the space of being your own boss while still working and making money, most likely having some kind of health insurance on the background, as well as then it's a little bit easier to, if you decide that entrepreneurship or quitting is not for you, then it's easier to probably go back from a part-time job to a full-time job, as opposed to having quit and then getting rehired. That may not necessarily be the case, but yeah.
Let's unpack that a little though, because I did switch from full-time to part-time before I just quit. And I was planning on staying part-time for a while because I could make $500 to $1,000 per shift, which like now I would never I mean, that's just not enough money for me to get out of bed and do that horrible job anymore. But it was like a roller coaster going back and forth between doing something I really loved doing and doing something that I hated doing. So it was kind of rough. And then plus, when you have a backup plan, you don't try as hard. When you have a safety net, you don't put the action in that you need to build that business. So I could see how just pulling off the Band-Aid and taking a full leap and quitting your job probably would lead to more success than whatever this like interim middle ground is, where you have your backup plan. Maybe you're putting forth a little bit of effort towards your business, but like, yeah, you're probably just kind of in this limbo purgatory world for a long time.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess it really depends on like, yeah, how much money you have saved, how badly you want to quit your job. I mean, all those factors, it's very personal, but it is an option at least.
Yeah,
but
it's like one foot in the door, 1 foot out the door, kind of like, am I staying or going? I could see how that kind of would mess with your mindset a little bit.
Yeah, and I've heard the phrase, don't have a plan B because it distracts from plan A.
Oh,
and so, yeah, I think that could absolutely be relevant.
And also, like, let's be real. If you quit your job and you want to go back to it or a similar job, you can get another job. This whole quitting thing, people put so much emphasis on it, like it has to be forever, or if things don't work out, they're going to go like homeless and hungry or something like that. If a month after quitting, you wanted to go back and work somewhere, you could have gotten a job. Like me, I could have gotten a vet job. I can't now because I'm no longer licensed. I totally cut off my safety net. But yeah, let's be real. Like you can always get another job.
Yeah, and I've heard that kind of in that retire early space of, yeah, if you quit or retire, whatever word you want to use, what's the worst thing that is going to happen? You just have to go back to what you were doing before.
Yeah, I think people put way, way too much emphasis on it. And like this whole, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with perfectionism and fear of failure and all that stuff. And it's like, no, you're just trying something new. You're just saying, hey, this isn't working out for me. I'm going to try something else. If it doesn't work out, I can go back. I mean, doors just open for you when you quit, essentially. It just gives you more options. And especially when your monthly bills are really low, you just have a million options at your fingertips for what you can do.
So the next part of planning the exit strategy is timing. And so there's kind of two facets to that. One is the personal timing, and then the other is like your job timing. So from a personal standpoint, I'm thinking of like, do you have any vacations planned? Do you have paid holiday coming up or big expenses that you know are like coming down the pipeline? Is now the best time to quit, or is it better to maybe milk that health insurance for another month or two if you have a surgery or something like that? Is it coming to be bonus time? Those were a few things that I was so ready to quit that I basically threw away my bonus because I quit too early. I did get my winter holiday off, but I put my notice in before raises were approved. And so that was a misfire, but I learned. So keep that in mind when you're planning to put your notice in your quit day.
Yeah. And like you can also quit and then build your business, but like you probably want to start building your business before you quit too. We didn't really talk about that yet. So that's what I did. I mean, I was essentially working 2 full-time jobs. I was crazy. I was like a full-time wedding photographer and a full-time ER vet. I was insane. That was probably a little too much work. I probably went a little too crazy with all that. But that was how I did it. And that's how a lot of my students do it too. They're kind of building their business on the side and utilizing their 9-to-5 job to pay bills and stuff like that. Because, I mean, both options are hard. You kind of just have to choose your hard. Because building a business while trying to depend on it for income is freaking hard. I see people struggle with that all the time. They quit their jobs, they're building their photography or their coaching business, and they are like, man, if I don't get somebody to book me in the next few days, I can't pay my mortgage, like I'm screwed. But building a business, like it takes time and it's not always on your timeline. So that's important to understand. Like you're not necessarily going to be making a profit in the timeline that you want, which is why the preparation is so important. So that is hard, but then also working 2 jobs is hard. So you kind of have to choose your hard in that scenario. And that's really a personal choice.
Yeah. So a few other things to think about when you're planning this exit strategy is, can you use this quitting or this potential quitting plan to leverage some kind of benefit to you? And the few things that I'm thinking here are, if your job is okay, can you milk a higher salary for however much longer until you get the next bonus, until you get to another milestone in your new business? And I guess it's a thing of knowing that conversation with your boss. Are you willing to just quit, or is it a negotiation? Where do you stand, and how severe do you need to quit? A few other things, like, can you use kind of this potential to quit as a way to get more vacation days or to work from home more often? Again, to build in that buffer before you actually pull the full trigger.
So you can tolerate your shitty job a little bit before you leave.
Yeah. And we've heard of people doing that, right? They've turned that into becoming a manager. Yeah. Higher salary, all these different things that can maybe make your job better. Or,
It's also kind of just delaying the inevitable. I've definitely had multiple students, or one I'm thinking of in particular. Hi, Anna. Who threatened to quit her job or like put in her 2 weeks unless she was given a promotion or whatever. And she was really hoping that they were just going to let her go. And now she's a manager and she's making a lot more money, which is great. But yeah, it is just kind of delaying the inevitable of her quitting. So sometimes I just want, people to just pull the Band-Aid and just go for it, because it's kind of delaying success in a way, of the success that she would find in her business. But I can see how some people would and could use that to their benefit for sure.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say about the planning of the exit strategy is kind of just, where do you stand within your job? Like, what are your duties? Like, are you in the middle of a project? Are you in a good spot to pass that work off? Though your job may totally suck and you're getting taken advantage of, probably you've made good relationships with the people you work with and you don't want to leave them high and dry. And so again, just kind of being a good person to the folks that you've worked with is always a good thing. So planning that notice to make sure you're not just giving them 2 weeks, how you can offload your work, train someone else, or however that may look in your particular job, but making sure that you're leaving a good taste in everyone's mouth when you leave, and that you're in a spot that you're proud of as you walk away.
Or you can just be like me and burn some bridges, I guess. I'm assuming I did. Because I left in the middle of a mental breakdown and just kind of told people I wasn't going to be able to pick up my shifts and that they're going to have to find a replacement, and then just never heard from them again. But I do know several people who are struggling to quit their jobs because they do love their coworkers. And we should talk about that, because your coworkers, I think, are going to want to see you be happy. And they know that your work environment sucks, and they probably won't hold it against you for leaving, and they'll be proud of you, because all work environments suck. Like I talk to so many people with 9-to-5 jobs, and I don't know anybody except maybe one of your friends, Todd, who actually enjoys going to work every day. I mean, most environments are very toxic, and so your coworkers are not going to hold it against you for leaving. But yeah, don't leave them high and dry. I don't really care about your management team or your bosses. Yeah, you probably should not burn some bridges, but you also got to do what you have to do for your mental health.
Yeah, because if you're not looking out for you, no one else will. So
they definitely aren't.
Quit on your time, not on your company's time, because like we said before, you are replaceable, even if you think you're not, and how important you are and how much you bring to the table. Like, if you're that important, they should be paying you way more if they can't replace you. So yeah, quit on your time, quit on your terms. It's your life.
Quit that job. Okay, what's number 3?
All right, so then number 3 is looking to the future, which is basically having a plan and sticking to it. So you crunch the numbers in step 1, you know how much you're going to be spending, and stick to that. When you don't put stuff in your bank account, it goes down, and it goes down fast. Mm-hmm. Speaking from experience, it runs away.
Todd has a spreadsheet that basically shows him when his bank account will go to 0, like in the future. He'll be like, man, if I don't book any more videos, I got 0 money come July or whatever it is. But that lights a fire under you to get things done, for sure. And I'm kind of on the easy track right now because I have so many monthly payments coming in from people I've worked with in the past or work with currently. So I know I have like a monthly income at this point that stretches out a year from now. So yeah, my bank account's like never really going dry, but you have to hustle a little bit, but that's fine because business is all about taking action. And while hustle culture is a whole other thing that drives me crazy, keeping track of your expenses, knowing when you're going to hit that zero and being like, okay, well, I got to get some shit done between now and then so that I can make some money. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
And it's not just a vacation when you quit your job. I mean, you might need some time to recover from the burnout you're experiencing. I mean, I know I sure did. But yeah, you want to essentially replace your prior work with your new work in your job, but maybe just not 40 hours a week because people aren't productive for 40 hours a week. Let's say 6 hours a day for 4 days a week. Put the work in.
Divided over 7 days, however you want.
Yeah. Or you could be like Todd, and he kind of was on vacation mode for a while.
Yeah, I was in the recovery mode.
Yeah, he was in vacation mode. I was in like, when I quit vet med, I was in the like trying not to have daily panic attacks mode from my recovering from my burnout. I can laugh about it now. But yeah, you have to basically execute your own plan in your own business. You have to be intrinsically motivated. You don't have a boss anymore. You don't have anybody telling you what to do. You can sleep in. You do have freedom now, but you can't let that kind of take over and not build your business and make money. It does take some momentum. It does take consistency. It does take work. I don't want you to work too hard. I don't want you to subscribe to the hustle culture where we're working like 20 hours a day, but you do have to put the work in.
Yeah. And build your business with whatever routine or with whatever goal or plan or strategy you come up with. But yeah, you're now in charge of being your boss and getting work done and bringing money in.
Mm-hmm. And let me tell you guys, being able to make money on your own is the best job security you will ever have. Ever. I have made over $1 million on my own. How fucking cool is that to be able to say that? I pay for my own health insurance. I contribute money to my own 401k. I can increase my income. I can take vacation days whenever I want. I sleep in every morning. I don't subscribe to that whole thing where you have to get up at 5 or 6 a.m. to be a millionaire. Like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm sleeping in and doing my thing. But it's going to be terrifying no matter what. I think that's how we could summarize this is like, no matter how you end up quitting your job, that leap is never going to be easy. It's always going to be terrifying. It's absolutely risky and outside of your comfort zone, but that's where all the cool things are happening. You know, it's so cliche, but all the cool shit happens outside your comfort zone and all the rewards happen after you take the risk. So I want to see you guys doing that and taking that risk and going after those dreams, because if you need to fall back on a job, there are plenty of jobs. You can always get another job. But very few people ever actually pursue their true dreams. Very few. And to be one of those people is one of the coolest things. That's my proudest moment, is quitting veterinary medicine. That's my proudest moment for sure.
That's pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. So following that, so next week we are going to talk about market saturation and how it really doesn't exist. So if you're one of these people who have already started a business or want to start a business and you're afraid like, oh, there's already too many photographers or there's too many website designers or there's too many bloggers or coaches or book writers or whatever else, next week we're going to be talking about how you don't have to worry about that because market saturation does not exist. Stay tuned. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Stoked with Megan McPhail. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring content, check us out on Instagram at Stoked with Megan McPhail. And to learn more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you quit your 9-to-5, visit my website at meganmcphail.com. I hope this leaves you feeling stoked. See you next week.